Hello, I'm Jeremy Crampton. It's a pleasure to be presenting at the Data Justice Conference this year. Today, I'd like to consider the question, is a slow AI possible? In the popular imaginary, AI is often associated with smart devices like Amazon's Alexa and Google's Home. And these are devices that are said to learn because they give non-rote answers or responses. They can adapt. Once when I idly asked one of my Alexa devices how she was, it replied, "I'm fine, thank you, Jeremy." The Alexa neatly and accurately demonstrated it could learn the difference between my voice and those of the other members of the household. That's one form of learning. And Amazon explicitly advertises this voice recognition capability. Alexa is also connected to the internet, and it's able not only to access all of this content, but more, and more usefully, assess which parts of it could improve an answer. Again, once when I asked Alexa how many incarnations of the Doctor in Doctor Who there had been, it replied that according to a reviewer on Amazon, one could say there'd been only one Doctor, but there had been 13 actors who had played the Doctor. Impressive answer. How soon, then, before Alexa is accurately passing comments on Reddit or Facebook and other far-flung reaches of the internet? It's one thing to read out an applicable Wikipedia answer, but I'd certainly be happy to agree that learning is taking place if it is better identifying relevant information wherever it was, packaging it up, and weighing the evidence. As a geographer, my work is focused on digital geographies. A potential example of machine learning in a spatial context is shown here, developed by colleagues in the Urban Observatory at Newcastle University. The algorithm identifies the correct objects in the scene, that is, human beings walking, and measures in real time their co-locational distance. And where this falls below recommended guidelines for physical distancing, the distance can be shown in orange if too close, or yellow if further apart. And it might be objected that people from the same household are allowed to walk close together, but this could be managed by combining this data with facial recognition and perhaps home address data. Or if there were an array of these cameras throughout the city, places where there were pinch points or a need for pavement widening could be identified. It would similarly identify where people congregate, or the patterns of congregation at different times without the need for human resources. And these data could have a range of applications for spatial analytics. These and many other examples of a transition of decision-making from the human to the computational realm are often associated with a speed up, especially of innovation. The unofficial former motto of Facebook, "Move fast and break things," is indicative of this disruptive ambition. If we are to consider the possibilities of a slow AI, it's important to properly understand the scale of innovation today and the speed and effects of that innovation. In fact, there are some interesting reasons to doubt whether we are in a time of acceleration, or as Danny Dorling argues, a time of slowdown. Dorling's view, although driven by empirical support, is still a minoritarian perspective. In order to consider this question in terms of AI, we can sketch out a conceptual distinction of fast and slow AI, as shown here. Now, these are competing motivations that I identify as the driving impulses of innovation. My argument is that impulses driving fast AI are inappropriate, detrimental, and unjust. They've driven a techlash that has played out over the last few years. Not only that, but if Dorling and other scholars of innovation are correct, they're out of step with the times. For example, solutionism, the term proposed by Evgeny Morozov, is more typically concerned with redressing bads, not creating goods. Because algorithms are reflexive, that is, are symptomatic of the values of designers and users. A slow AI, as you see here, is surgical, it's local, it is predicated on maintenance, not disruption, it can gracefully deconstruct, and it passes the so-called Benn test. So these are 5 questions for those who hold power that is AI in this case. They include things like what power have you got, in whose interest do you use it, and finally, how do we get rid of you? So fast AI, along with the assumption that we're in a rapid time of innovation, especially in technology, is grounded on a narrative of technological determinism. That is, technology is driving the way we do things, and that there's little or nothing we can do about it. And this is a variant, I think, on Morozov's solutionism. Now, the danger here is that this approach will create and sustain empty value monopolies predicated on surveillance capitalism. Although there have been attempts to ameliorate negative and unjust applications of these monopolies, self-regulation, such as industry codes of ethics, may be the wrong approach. And this is because agencies being placed at the wrong level, as we saw, for example, in the United Kingdom with the A-level exams fiasco, which was blamed on, quote, a mutant algorithm. But it's not that biased and unethical algorithms lead to unjust outcomes, but that structural inequalities give rise to unjust technologies. Therefore, as Jennifer Cobb has recently argued, we need to regulate big tech like any other part of the infrastructure, that is, like utilities, roads, and bridges. But not just any regulation. It should follow the guiding principles of slow AI. So what might this look like? My recent work has asked how we might learn from COVID-19 in terms of rethinking the built environment, building back not just better, but towards the pandemic resilient city. Now, possibilities of learning here from COVID-19 include what we might call desire spaces, that is, how people have already adapted to the pandemic, as shown in this picture that I took of my hometown, where the road had been roped off and turned into outdoor dining. So changing roads into pedestrian-friendly spaces and excluding cars. And there's a whole series of interesting work on counter mappings here. We might also reconsider the allocation of space in the city and how much space is devoted to non-sustainable car culture, as in this famous drawing by Carl Jilg. And finally, I argue that we need more human-based meanings of place, not just physical infrastructure for safety, such as horizontal or natural surveillance rather than CCTVs. And Vienna is a good example here of a gender-diverse planning. These often include small, slow interventions, such as low-traffic neighborhoods. What you're looking at in this little film clip, though, is an indication of just how difficult this might be, because there is a tendency to reset to normal. And low-traffic neighborhoods, such as the one in this video, are controversial and can be subverted by car culture. And I'm currently working with colleagues in Europe on a proposal to examine to what extent this reset to normal can be better understood and governed with spatial digital technologies. Thank you. If you wish to follow up with questions, you can reach me at these addresses, or for further reference, please see my opinion column published on the Ada Lovelace website.